Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the country. Welcome to Why Storytelling is the Key to Faster Growth. I am Kim Rosengren. I am the CEO of Markentem. We are an international marketing company who works with operators and vendors to grow their marketing momentum in the senior living industry. I am joined by a fantastic group of speakers on the panel, and I'll give them a chance to introduce themselves in just a minute. Actually, why don't we do that now, and then we'll jump into opening comments. So joining me on the panel, like I said, is a group of expert storytellers. Why don't we start going around the room, and Nathan, I'll let you introduce yourself. I know that this group doesn't really need much introduction, but please go ahead and tell us a little bit about you, Nathan, and your organization.
Yeah, thank you, Kim. Thanks everyone for having me. I am Nathan Jones. I'm the founder of Dash Media. We're 1 year old, and we help create content for senior living organizations, communities, and vendors to help tell your story through particularly video. And we help manage social media. And last year, our videos reached almost 100 million people around the world. And so we're really proud of that. So thanks for having us.
Fantastic. Welcome. Nicole, we'll jump over to you next.
Hello, I am Nicole Will. I am the founder of Will Gather. I started in the senior living space for a lot of years, and my grandma came to live with our family when I was younger, so I was in the caregiver space, and I'm merging those two worlds. Will Gather provides information, resources to older adults, family members, and senior living community. We do that through our podcast. We were in the top 15% shared globally via Spotify, which was super exciting. We know we're making an impact, and I really just have a heart to enlighten and expand people's awareness and raise all of the people that are doing incredible work in the care economy and share that with people in the world. So also founder of Gigi Betty Co., based after my grandma. Her name is Gigi Betty, and we bring respite care and merchandise to family caregivers. So it's a little bit about me.
Thank you. Thank you. And so many people in senior living have a personal story.
Yeah.
James, how about you?
Yeah, hi everyone. Happy to be here. My name is James Lee, and principally I'm the CEO and co-founder of Bella Groves. You may have seen us on LinkedIn. That's kind of the place I go to. We are a dementia education and care business, and I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of really great organizations across senior living. But this phase of my career really is aimed in focusing on small business, entrepreneurs, the underdogs in the senior living story, and I want to be an advocate for them. So to a lot of other things related to helping the industry through hopefully thought leadership and advancing important conversations. So happy to be here with this panel.
Thank you very much. And so why are we talking about storytelling today? I mentioned that, many people who work in senior living have a story to share. And that's really the point, right? It is a key differentiator for communities to really share the actual experiences that the residents have within that community. It is how an operator shares their story can really make the difference between a resident choosing their community and the one down the street. And there are so many natural experiences for them to share. The residents and the caregivers, the staff, all become heroes in their stories, and how they tell them is very important. Fundamentally, we all understand storytelling, but I wanted to just share a definition because I think it's important. Storynet.org says that storytelling is the interactive art of using words and actions to reveal the elements and images of a story while encouraging the listener's imagination. That last part, encouraging the listener's imagination, is key to helping a future resident, a family member, even a potential team member see what it would be like to live and work within your community. So how do you tell that story of your real life heroes and really differentiate your community in a very different way? We wanted to really help bring storytelling to life for you. And so in this webinar, we have three very distinct goals. We're going to demonstrate the power of storytelling for you. We want to share some storytelling fundamentals, and we want to help you understand the different media that you can use in your storytelling. And as you probably heard with the introductions, each one of our panelists uses a different media a different medium to really tell their stories. So let's go ahead and jump right into the discussion. And Nicole, we're going to start with you. What is storytelling, and why has it become such an important part in senior living?
Yeah, such a good question. And I really believe we are made for story. Storytelling has been such a big part of our history and our culture. It has this unique ability that really allows us to connect with people, share our experiences. We tell stories we can entertain, we can educate, we can inspire, and great stories, I think, really capture our attention. And so they stay in our memory longer than facts. And while stories can include facts and information, we hold on to a really great story. And when we think of any really great movie, really great book, I think it follows this simple framework. And I love how, and James will know who I'm talking about, Donald Miller gives us a really clear picture of this. We have a person who's that hero who goes on a journey. They encounter a problem, challenge, and in their frustration, a guide steps in, gives them a plan. We get that call to action. The action brings us into that new way of being, and the story ends in success. And at the beginning of any great story, we've got a hero who's like not really sure, they're not really equipped for the journey that they're about to embark on. And so that guide joins them, supports them, and it changes us when we go through that challenge, and it refines our character. And with that guide, we learn a new skill and we can overcome that challenge. And I think our residents and families, they care about their own story. They are in it. It's not about us. And it's kind of that, like when we see a story, we can see, okay, here's the piece of me that's also in you. And we identify with that. And it resonates, and we know we're not alone, and we're with them. And with senior living, it's important, I think, to really ask ourselves, who do our residents and families want to become? And what does success really look like for them? And great companies, great communities really transform the lives of our residents and families. So we are in such a unique position being in this business to like completely change and transform lives, which is what gets me really, really excited about it. We're the perfect guide. We are the perfect guide for them. And I think we all have this ability and human desire to want to transform. So I know these two gentlemen also have a lot to contribute about this as well. And so James, continue that conversation.
Yeah. You know, trying to define storytelling in a way that it's going to be memorable and then actionable. I try to think about how to reduce that down to something very, very simple. And I think of storytelling as advancing your culture. It's three words to remember. It's advancing your culture. If you think about storytelling from the dawn of man and woman, the beginning of our history as humans, we told stories. And so they were sometimes told to entertain, as Nicole said, or educate. But oftentimes they were told to preserve your culture, to teach and instill your values. I remember as kids, it wasn't the lessons of like the rules that I remember from my parents. It was the stories that went along with that. And so I think about, even in the context of business, storytelling is a way to advance your culture. And then that kind of links to a second part about this, and it may feel a little existential, but why do companies exist at all? Why do any senior living companies exist? And it's not to run a business. It's not to make money. It's not any of that. Companies exist because there's some kind of a need that we feel like we're in a good position to fill. And so that need is the only reason that companies like ours and everybody on this call exists. And so the culture that we're trying to advance is not our own. It's not our own company's culture. It's the culture of the people we're trying to help. And so if we can tell that story and do it in a way where our customers feel like, yeah, you really get me. You get my struggle. You get what I'm going through. And so therefore, I feel like you're in the best position to help me. I think that's how we should be thinking about storytelling.
Fantastic.
That's good.
Nathan, I know you have some thoughts on this one too.
Yeah, I'll be quick on this one. For me, stories are what drew me to senior living. I kind of stumbled my way into getting invited to visit a community, and I didn't really know what to expect. And in that hour of spending with 5 or 6 residents in Lawrenceville, Georgia, I felt like I learned so much. I was inspired. I laughed a lot. I left with confidence. I was excited about aging. And so ever since that moment, what has stood out to me that's unique about senior living is it's home to the best storytellers in the world.
Mhm.
And the world wants to hear those stories, even though they may not know they want to hear those stories, because these people are lawyers, doctors, business owners. They've gone through huge successes and huge lows, and they've gotten through them. And so what's unique to them is they have a story to tell to help inspire, educate, and entertain the next generation and all of us. And I think that's what is attractive about senior living is it's home to the best storytellers in the world.
Absolutely. And so many stories that need to be told out there. Like you said, so many stories that people want to hear. To me, fundamentally, it's a fundamental part of marketing to tell a story.
Mhm.
And James, you mentioned on this the whole concept of why, and anybody who's read Simon Sinek, Start With Why, understands that entrepreneurs always have a why. There's a reason that they started their company. They didn't start it to build a business, right? They started it because they wanted to solve a unique problem. And the closer we stay to that original why, I think the more likely it is that we stay close to our culture and our brand.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Nicole, why is storytelling different today? And why is it easier to capture and push those stories to the market?
Well, from many years ago, I mean, if you look at today, we have so much information coming at us from so many directions, and our attention spans are so much shorter. I think it's really important to be super clear, be quick, and be effective. And so, how do we do that? Now we have so many tools, we have so much technology that we've got the ability at our fingertips to really create and share stories quickly and effectively, and in ways that we've never had before, and worldwide, right? When Nathan was talking about the reach that they have, that is around the entire world. One small example of that is there is a farm that I follow on Instagram called Ballerina Farm. She has 2.7 million followers on this little farm in Utah that they sell their grass-fed meat and their sourdough starter. And why am I saying this story? Well, who would have thought that a little farm in Utah would have a reach of 2.7 million people around the entire world, where they're sharing what they do and being able to get their message and their mission out there. And it just is an example of, we're captivated by the story, right? We're captivated by this little family farm, and we're drawn to that. Some of us are drawn to that, and we can witness and participate. And 20 years ago, we wouldn't have that impact, or Nathan's company wouldn't have the ability to reach that many people and help senior living tell their story. We also have access to data like we've never had before. We're able to have it inform and shape our storytelling, and have the tools of those analytics that really help us understand the results of our impact. We have social media, audio, video. We have all of these different forms like never before. VR, we're able to be interactive. Before, I think, in marketing, we would be able to share our message, but we wouldn't really hear our feedback or be able to, interact with our customer in a message, in a direct message, like we are before, in a comment. And so that has really shifted. There's also Digiday, which is a marketing firm, their trends really looking at 2023. It's that there's the rise for people are wanting authenticity over perfection. And so we're moving away from perfectly curated marketing messages to, guess what? I want to see the real life. I want to hear the story. I want to be a part of the conversation. I want to hear the tone and the voice and see your face and all of that like never before, because we want to feel like we're really knowing who we're doing business with and who we're interacting with. So I think it's exciting. Yeah.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, either one of you have a comment?
Yeah, I
James?
mean, for me, the biggest change is just to piggyback of what Nicole said, is at any given moment, you have the ability to reach 1 million people plus with your story. Whereas 10 years ago, that was not the case. You had to go through different news channels, media outlets for anyone to really see, a 100-year-old World War II veteran telling, his life story or some unique experience that he had. Like, now you can literally post that on TikTok, and there's a chance that 4 million people will be watching the video and 100,000 will be visiting your website and trying to figure out what's next. And so I think the point there is, like, they want to hear the raw, real story and not be sold to. And then, we're going to get into that a little bit later, but putting the stories out there is step one. And you can't have an audience and build trust and change perception and do all these things that we want to do if we're not putting anything out there for the public to see.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna piggyback, but take a different spin on what Nicole and Nathan have said. All of those things are 100% true, and I think it's actually because of that there are so many stories out there that our story can get lost in that. And I'm no stranger to kind of calling out our own industry. And I think if we're being really self-effacing, we do a bad job of storytelling. We have the same kind of narrative between companies. Honestly, if you covered up your company logo and name, and this was the ad, this was the story, this was the video, it could, for the most part, be applied to any one of our companies. And so I think we need to do a better job first of understanding that the goal of storytelling is not this Red Rover game of we tell a great story and then come on over. We're inviting fellow storytellers, right? Our customers are fellow storytellers. We're trying to merge our stories together. And I think that is the main visual difference I'd like people to have, is that storytelling isn't a sales gimmick to get people to give you their money. It's an invitation for us to tell the same story together. And so I'll give a very quick example. For Bella Groves, one of our main story points is that we call it a social contract, that here locally in San Antonio, we have a societal obligation to help our fellow neighbors who are affected by and living with dementia. So that's the story we're trying to tell. Everything associated with our content, our marketing, is to that moral social responsibility. And we're inviting people who think the same way. And so lo and behold, when we interact with our customers, they're not asking us about cost or contracts or amenities. They come to us because they believe in the same thing. Yeah, you know what? We all have this responsibility to care for our own. And so it's not a Red Rover game. It's we're in a circle telling our stories, and we're inviting people to that circle.
We're helping them see what it's like to be part of the circle, right?
Yeah, and we're trying to merge our story with theirs.
Welcoming them in.
Yeah, it's that idea of we co-write it together,
Yeah.
right? And if these are the last chapters of their life, and James, I know you had mentioned this before when we had talked, is that this is the only product you purchase for the rest of your life typically. And we are the co-writers. And so how do we do that and do it really well and be a part of that?
Yeah.
Nathan, you had mentioned social media. Social media has given us the ability to really share a story quickly. Certainly, I think social media has helped make storytelling more popular and more prevalent. What else has made storytelling more popular, do you think, especially for senior living?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think at the end of the day, we all would say we're a great place to work. We all would say we have great benefits and we all offer competitive pay, yet that's the first thing you see on most people's websites. And so I think that James said this in one of our prep calls, that the point of a good story is the protagonist is the person who you're trying to reach. So the main character, the hero, is the daughter or the potential resident or the CNA if you're trying to recruit and be on TikTok and recruit CNAs. And so making the person you're trying to reach the protagonist of the piece of content that you're putting out there is step number one. That's the most important thing. Otherwise, they're going to keep scrolling. We're not competing with the other senior living community down the street when it comes to social media. You're competing with a billion other people. There's 1.2 billion people that actively use Instagram. So you're competing with the world. And so you have to make it interesting, when you're competing with entertainment and sports and things that they're interested in. You have to stop and grab their attention. And I think what that has done is educate the consumer and make them more numb and aware of when they're being sold to, and when an ad is coming up, and when you're trying to get something from them. And so I think that what storytelling does is you're showing that you serve people who are in their shoes. And by serving people in their shoes and showing them consistently, story after story, and stealing 30 seconds 3 times a week from their day while they're on social media, you're building trust with them. So when that decision to find a place for mom or to find a job comes up, you're the first person they're going to think of, and they're going to pursue you. And so I think it's a process to tell the stories, but if it's done correctly and done with the person you're trying to reach as the protagonist, it's the most effective way, in my opinion, to reach a potential customer or recruit a potential employee.
Yeah.
Their thoughts.
Yeah, my thought as you were talking, Nathan, was about that, connection, and we know we're being sold to, but we don't, right? It's like we know that, but sometimes it's sneaky. But I think if we focus on making connection with people, right? And I heard this term where it's like, if we make the connection, the transaction will follow. It's a sales summit, so we're talking about that as well. But I think if our focus is truly, we want to connect, we want to share, we want to hear their perspective, we want to create an environment where families feel comfortable. And I think when we see bits of ourselves and other people's stories, that's where the humanness comes in, and we can, we connect to stories and people that we identify with, a little bit, or we aspire to be. And that is, I think, to your point, Nathan, when the trust happens and when you go, I might not need to make this decision right now, but I might need to make it in a year or 2 or 5 from now. And I'm going to remember that because I feel that connection. I feel that trust.
Yeah. Storytelling, particularly on social media, I think going back to you're inviting people to merge our stories together. If your customers see your story and they stop, and here's the biggest indicator for me that the story is hitting is that they share it. Not that it's liked, not that it's commented on, but they share it. And think about the power of the share. When they hit share, they have adopted it as their own story. Right? When they hit the share button, now this is my story and I'm going to keep advancing this. That is what storytelling is. It's like hearing a joke, and like, oh, Nicole told a funny joke. I'm going to tell this to somebody else that Nicole doesn't know. I'm going to take credit for it and I'm going to spin it, so it's my own flavor. But that is the beauty of storytelling, is it's memorable. Now I'm going to adopt it as my own and I'm going to share it. So when I post something on LinkedIn or Bella Groves post something on social media, and that thing gets shared, I am very, very interested in what they say about what they're sharing. And so that's an indicator for me, okay, I'm on the right track, I'm hitting the right notes, I need to do more of this storytelling. So sales, salespeople, we are hungry for metrics. So that is one of the metrics I think is kind of an undervalued one, is shares. Everybody focuses on comments, likes, and engagements, but the one I pay attention to most is shares.
It's an interesting
And
perspective. Go ahead, Nathan.
one piggyback real quick on that is, if you look at it from the business perspective of the social media platform, so Instagram or LinkedIn, for instance, when you share, you're bringing another customer to their platform. So they're going to promote your content more. So if you look at it through their lens, those shares really are the shares and watch time. They want people to watch the video a long time, and they want it to share with someone after they watch it. If they do that, you're way more likely to get a lot more eyeballs on it than if they just like it and keep scrolling. So good point there, James. I like that was good.
It's easy to equate storytelling with social media. And we've talked a lot about some social media channels. It isn't the only venue that we have, though, for storytelling, right? We have the traditional writing, case studies, blogs, and LinkedIn posts is a little bit of a amalgamation between social media and traditional writing. Photographs and videography and podcasting as well are different avenues for storytelling. How does an operator really choose the right format or formats to tell their story and represent their brand? James, you want to kick this one off for us?
Yeah, I think it's a really important point, Kim, that you make, that storytelling is not social media. We tend to gravitate towards there and have the metrics around it. But how I think about storytelling, there's two components to it. One is being able to define very clearly, what story do we want to tell? It's a simple question with a very hard answer if you don't focus on it as a company. And here's just another way to kind of measure that. Just go to random people on your team, on your organization, and ask them, what story is our company trying to tell? And then just listen, see what others tell you, and you'll have a mark of, are we on the same page, or gosh, we have a lot to work on here. So part one is, what story do we want to tell? And two, I think our industry is very, very, very friendly towards one another, which is good. But we also sometimes mistake that we have competitive differences between us, and competition is good. And so from that perspective, part two is understanding what your competitors are trying to tell in their story, and is ours unique and different from that story. So if customers in our market see an ad from us, a social media post from somebody else, a blog from somebody else, and all of those feel like the same story, it doesn't invite the customer to come in and play and figure out what's important to me. But for us, we're being very clear in our local market about what we're trying to do. So one component of our story is that you need to learn more about dementia in order for you to be a good caregiver, right? So that paired with the social mission of care, those two things, when we put it out into the market, we are being very specific about what story we want to tell and how it differentiates from the other offerings here in San Antonio. So I think if you want to be a great storyteller and choose your format, do we do blogs, do we do podcasts, et cetera, all of that is secondary to, do I know what story I want to tell? And do I know what stories my competitors are saying, and how mine is different from that?
Yeah. And I think too, when we look at what stories we want to tell, that determines who our audience is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we determine our format based on where our audience is.
Yeah.
And we have, my expertise is podcasting at the moment. And you also have to know just how time intensive different formats can be, and the amount of, research involved and relationships, and understanding if we identify what our resources are and the bandwidth that we have, and kind of getting clear on budget and the message that we want to tell, it can also distill down then what format we want to use. Some take more time and effort and money than others. And also that objective what's the objective we're wanting to accomplish? You know, what's that bigger solution to the problem that we're trying to solve? I think it really makes it a little more clear and identifiable. Are we going to go with social media at the moment? Are we going to try to do audio? And so are we identifying we've got an occupancy problem? Are we wanting to, challenge our staffing and grow that? Are we improving culture in our community? That will really, I think, steer us in the directions for format. And, I think while storytelling can be learned, some people are more natural storytellers. It's like you go to a dinner party, there's a guy or girl that's like, they just like capture the room and they tell a great story. And you're like, oh my gosh, I was like captivated for 10 minutes while you told that awesome story. Some people have that ability. And so I also think it's looking at format is also identifying and discovering the talents within your team. Do you have someone that's really dynamic in front of the camera? Do you have a talented writer on your team? Do you have someone that's like super tech savvy that like gets TikTok? My sister had to like show me how to use things the other day. That might determine what direction you go in. And then also, elevate the position of the storyteller on your team and identify who has that gift. Like find your storyteller and what they really excel at and lean into that. And this is the perfect opportunity to also contract it out with people like Nathan and Dash Media that can do that for you. I think also being really understanding of what your capacity is. So on that note, Nathan, I'm going to let you share more about that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think for us, we Dash Media was started to be a content creating company, and the reason we developed this expertise in social media is because that's where there's all this untapped attention and interest in senior living on social media, and so we adopted social media as our primary place of putting our content. But at the end of the day, if everyone deleted social media tomorrow, the content is king. And so if you're not capturing the content, it doesn't matter what platform you should be on because you don't have the content that's going to engage the audience. And so capturing your content, having a plan for that. And for me, I personally believe video is the future. All the platforms are moving towards video. Much as I love photos, my wife is a photographer. Photos are great, but for whatever reason, videos engage people a little bit more right now. And so having a video strategy, how are you capturing video? How are you empowering your staff, or are you allowing your staff to capture video? These are questions that you just have to ask yourself. And for us, I think we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but I've seen that it takes 2.5 people to really have a successful strategy when it comes to this. Someone who can capture, edit, and repurpose the content to go across all the platforms, how they're supposed to be on that platform, and then someone to take the content after it's created and post it in the right place and write good copy. And I think it's not just one thing. It's a whole process that you really have to plan out and create a strategy around it. And that strategy should be centered around storytelling, which is what today's all about.
I think that's really a great way to think about it from a content perspective. Understanding the story you want to tell, the audience you want to tell it to, your objective, and thinking about the talent really leads us to that the best medium to use for each topic. And I think that's a fantastic way to say it. And to really think about it, it's another that those are the fundamentals of marketing, basically, mm-hmm. Right? And we sometimes we think that storytelling is complicated, but it's the same thing that we do. It's a different piece of content, and I think that's a great way. Nathan, kind of continuing with you, how are you seeing operators really use storytelling to tell that specific story or a very specific angle? Back to Nicole's idea around you got to think about what that story is that you want to tell.
Yeah, I think for us, everyone has two things they're really after. It's affecting occupancy or affecting staffing. And a great staffing story that I heard, right now, I think that if you're trying to get CNAs and you want to get in front of a lot of CNAs, TikTok's the best place. We saw the numbers go from hashtag CNA went from 1.4 billion views on TikTok last March to today it's almost 4 billion views. So there's so much content and so many CNAs consuming content on TikTok that we had a client to say, hey, let's start, making the CNA the protagonist of our story on TikTok. And so we did that. I went and asked a resident at this Atlanta nursing home, what caregiver means the most to you? Or is there a caregiver that means a lot to you in your life? And she said, oh, let me tell you about Ophelia. And she goes on and tells the story about Ophelia, the CNA that she laughs with, that they check in and tells her story. There was 100,000 views on that. And the top comment was, I just wish it was another CNA. And the CNA said, it is rare that us CNAs get to hear our story being shared and feeling appreciated. So thank you for sharing this, and thank you for Ophelia. And I think they just want to hear that they're heroes. And when you do that, it attracts them to your organization. And we've seen, those kind of results as well. So we have tons of stories like that from both, attracting people to come move in and attracting staff. But that one always sticks out to me just because of the comments that you read from other CNAs of what that story meant to them.
Mm-hmm. I love that one. I want to take that. I don't have a new thing to add. I just want to take Nathan's thing. I'm sharing Nathan's thing. So this is the equivalent of sharing on social media, right? Share. Think about what Nathan said compared to what we normally do. And I'm going to raise my hand and say I'm guilty of this too. But think of how many job ads we put out there that are just job descriptions. Here's your set of responsibilities. Or you have some employment ad that says great benefits, great flexibility, great hours, whatever. But think about who is the hero of that story. We are. Look what a great company we are. We offer X, Y, and Z. But the story that Nathan just gave is the perfect example of flipping it to where who is the protagonist? It's the CNA, it's the caregiver. Putting their story in front of you, they can extrapolate from that all of the values, all the things you want them to think about your company. Of course, we can extrapolate from this video that company must really reward its employees. They must put value in, these areas. But they made that secondary, and they made the primary focus the story of the CNA and the relationship between the CNA and the resident. I am 100% stealing that, and I may or may not give Nathan credit for it, but I'm going to definitely steal it.
Oh, it's so good.
Love it.
Yeah. And it goes back to your plan, right? That client was wanting to recruit and to share that story. And I think it's important that, it's so easy to get distracted. You said, how many stories are we competing with in the world of storytelling? And so it's so important to go back to what our objective is, because we could share from the perspective of the resident, from the family, from our staff, from the community. And so identifying what that is, and I love that saying, like, clear is kind. If we're really clear on what we're trying to share, then our customers are clear. They're like, oh, I get that. That's what they're wanting to share with us. And I think it's so important too that we have that line of sight vision with our messaging, so that not only we know what our message is, but does everybody else in our community and our culture know that as well? Are we effectively doing that so that we're all on the same page and being able to share that specific story and angle, which was what the question was, really clearly. Does your team know your story? And I think that if we can keep everyone aligned, it's that ripple effect, and your entire team then can be your sales force, which is super exciting, because who doesn't want that, to have that voice and that message out into the community. I think it just puts everybody on that same page when we know that story and that angle.
Mm-hmm. Right. Going back to your strategy, right? What is your overall marketing strategy? What is that ultimate brand you have? How do you tell that story? James, you had mentioned the understanding how you actually differ from your competition. And every good elevator pitch also talks about how, what you do better than your competition, right? So
Mhm.
it's bringing all of those key elements that you think about every day in
Mhm.
everyday marketing into your story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think when we use that story outlook, it puts everything in order so our brain doesn't have to do that, right? We're so used to like being able to see things and get that clearly, because if it's too complicated and we don't know what to do with like all of this information or messages that are coming at us, we'll be like, we're done, we're checking out, there's too much confusion. So, being really clear on that, I think allows our families and our residents and our staff and people that we're
Mhm.
interacting with to just absorb it and get it, and then act quickly if they need to.
Yeah, that's a really great point about the power of storytelling and its tie to emotions. I think we all understand in the sales realm of senior living that we are dealing with emotions more than a logical choice. It's an emotional journey more than it is a logical choice. Because if it were strictly just the logical choice, right, our sales processes would be a lot shorter. They'd be a lot more effective. So we all get that it's an emotion. Storytelling evokes emotion. They will not remember statistics about here's what they do X, Y, and Z, but so one of the ways that we do storytelling, I think it's been one of our most successful marketing pieces, is a billboard that just says "Love greater than dementia." And that's it. We put the company name at the bottom, but that was it. We pay monthly for a billboard that has 3 words on it, basically. But it evokes an emotion. It's implicit that there's a story there, and that I want to talk to the people that just put this billboard up. And so you would not believe the number of people, both employees and residents, family members, who come to us and say, "This is why we looked you up." So if you can understand the emotional journey, and again, that we are inviting them to tell their story alongside us, I think you'll be more effective as a it's the ultimate leave behind for your customers is a story. That's a quotable quote. I think Christy on the call here is going to steal that, but that's a quotable quote right there.
I think you're right. We have a question from the audience. Allison Combs is asking about Facebook. And Nathan, I know that you talk a lot about TikTok, but what's your experience with posting videos on Facebook?
Yeah, Facebook's something very recently that we've had some big, huge success on, because Facebook lagged behind with adopting the short form video content. So people moved to Instagram, they moved to TikTok, and now Facebook Reels has come out. So you don't have quite as much competition on Facebook Reels as you do Instagram. It's so new. And so our views are going way up on Facebook Reels. And it goes back to, I think, your last question of like, how can you take 20 minutes of content and put it on all these different platforms? And that's what I would recommend is you can create a TikTok video, format it for TikTok, and then take that video, format it for Instagram and Facebook, and be on everything. Not, your customers are everywhere. And I think the point is that if you put your story on all these different platforms, you're reaching a variety of people. And Facebook's a great platform for that. I think for us, it got a little crowded and a little addy and spammy, and I think they recognize that, and so they made changes, and now it's a good platform in our eyes. But being on everything is a good thing. So creating the content, number one, and then figuring out how and where to distribute that content are the 2 main questions you got to ask yourself.
And that actually leads us nicely into our next question, which is, it's not really as easy as it looks on social media, right? It takes some prep work. There is some editing work, and then there's there's also some back end work that you need to be able to parse that story and figure out what parts of the story you want to use on different media.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll chime in a little bit on that. we're making over like between 50 and 70 videos a week right now for our clients. Those videos take, anywhere from 45 minutes to 5 hours to edit. And so to think that you can add it to a marketing director's description in their job that they need to manage all these social medias, create the content, and grow a following is just, it's tough. I mean, I don't know, like what we say is, like I said earlier, it's 2.5 employees. It's the content creator, social media manager, and then the half person is someone responding to the leads, the family inquiries, the comments that can be part of someone's description. But those first two other people, that's a full-time job if you want to be successful in sharing your stories on those platforms.
Nicole, you talk about you make podcasting look so easy. And is it as easy as you make it look, or do you practice? How do you plan for that? What do you do to make your podcast look so fantastic?
Thank you for that. First of all, I'm glad it looks easy. There's a lot of work that goes into it. Obviously, there's, we talked about the need for a plan, and right, I'm identifying with each guest. We're having conversation ahead of time about what is that bigger solution to the problem that we're solving. And so while we're highlighting CEOs and founders and authors and caregivers and stories and initiatives and wanting to elevate that, I also want to focus on what is the bigger story that we're telling that can offer people hope and encouragement, and that they walk away and they feel like I've got so much value, right? I've pulled out of that podcast something that's going to encourage me as I walk this journey with my loved one. And when I first started, it really took about a year before I even saw a lot of traction and engagement. And if I would have given up in a couple months and been like, oh, nobody's listening, nobody's here, I would have missed out on the impact and the reach that we're making now. And it's been incredible to hear, we've made Apple charts in many different companies or countries, And so seeing that the time and the consistency has really paid off when you think that you're doing the hard work every day and it goes into the void and no one's paying attention, and that can get, discouraging at times. So my encouragement would be that it takes time and it takes consistency, and to not give up. And obviously, you want to test different formats, right? As an operator, you'll see what works for you and what your community grabs to. But there are about at least, if not more, 10 hours worth of work per one episode that's released, between the research, the questions, the editing, the social media. There's a whole behind the scenes that happens, and it's so worth it. It truly is worth it. I think, podcasting is a really unique space because it's evergreen. It lives on, and it's searchable. And it continues. I'm an avid podcast listener of many different podcasts, and I listen to ones that were released, how many years ago, that are new to me because I found it. I was able to search through it, and I relate to the story that's being told and who's doing that. So, just to reiterate Nathan's point as an operator, to add on, if you think you can just add on social media or podcasting or writing to someone's already full-time job and plate, and we know how hard everybody works, it's an unrealistic ask. Know that it's a lot of work that goes into things that they're already doing. So just to be really mindful of that, unless someone has the capacity, just to know the time commitment that's there, that's worth it, but it's a big time commitment. Yeah.
James, you know about that time commitment. You spend a lot of time writing your individual posts on LinkedIn. There, one thing that's clear is that they're very authentic, and you are incredibly consistent with those. Tell us a little bit about why that's so, and what would you recommend for people who maybe don't have quite as much time to prep for a podcast or a video, but have some time to do some writing?
I think LinkedIn is a really, really accessible medium for storytelling for our industry. It's January, so I was just kind of analyzing everything from last year. The thing is about LinkedIn, for me, it's just it's constant feedback to me about what resonates with my peers out in this industry. So if I want to be effective and even hoped to be a thought leader in this industry, I need to have an accurate pulse of what resonates with my colleagues out there. So I was really proud of these numbers until Nathan threw out his 100 million, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it anyway. So my LinkedIn post last year in 2022 had a 1,005,000 impressions. So we'll round it to 1 million. So a million impressions in 1 year. And of those, my posts on average have about 4,000 engagements. So, I mean, there are hundreds of posts through last year. They're not all winners. Some of them are duds. But even my most successful had about 75,000 impressions. All of my top impressions, all 10 of my top 10 posts were story-based. They were some kind of a narrative thing. And so the one tip I have for all of us here regarding authenticity is that I think the posts that I've had the most engagement, the people reaching out, wanting to work with me, all of those great outcomes from social media are the ones that made me feel nervous hitting post.
Mhm.
They're the ones I sat there and thought, okay, oh man, who's going to write me about this one? But it was in my heart to say, and that's the thing about authenticity is that you know in your gut if it's you and it's your story. That goes back to an earlier point about what story do you want to tell and what are other people saying? What are their stories? So if it scares you a little bit, it's probably on the track of authenticity. We as an industry are so risk averse, and rightfully so in some areas. But one of the things we can do better at is instead of responding to the risk that comes, inherent to our business, we can plan what risk we want to go after. And I'm willing to risk a little bit of putting my toe on that line of, is this something we should talk about? And yes, there's going to be people who don't agree with that story, but you're going to find out who your supporters are. You're going to find out who your co-authors are. So that's my one bit of advice regarding LinkedIn is authenticity, adding to Nicole's tip about consistency, and it should scare you just a little bit.
Mhm.
Speaking of fears, another fear that people have is maybe being interviewed, whether it's on camera, off camera, or even appearing in front of the camera. What tips do you have for helping people overcome those fears? Nicole, how about you?
Well, guess what? I still get nervous. But I do it anyways. And I think to James' point, nerves show we care, and nerves, stir something in our soul a little bit that it's important and we have a message to get out. And so I do it anyways. I do it uncomfortable. I do it scared. And the more I do it, the more I build confidence in what I'm doing. And so, of course, anytime any of us start out doing anything, we're not experts. We have not, flexed that confidence muscle, but the more we do it, it builds, it gets easier. We find our voice, we can be in front of camera. I think it's also important, like James was saying, to really be yourself and be authentic because, there's only one you, there's only one you with that unique lens on the world and your perspective, and to trust yourself and not compare yourself with other people. I think we can, get caught up in what everyone's doing. And I love that quote, comparison is the thief of joy. And it's really so important that we just focus on ourselves and the story that is on our heart to share and not be worried about how other people might perceive that, because everyone's going to have an opinion. It's like some people might resonate to really funny, humorous things, and some people want maybe deeper conversation and heartfelt things. It's like we all have those people and messages that we connect to, and it's just important to be who you are and show up anyways, and lean into that and pull out the gifts that you have. My advice.
Be yourself. Whether it's you
yourself.
or you're interviewing someone.
Yeah,
Just be
and do it
yourself.
nervous. It's okay. We want to, we need your voice and message into the world, and practice with friends and family, right? Send messages or send videos to people. And the more you do that, it'll get a little bit more comfortable. Yeah, the more you do it.
Yeah, I have just a quick thought there. I know we have a lot of sales and marketing VPs of sales and marketing directors and leaders on the call, and we have a lot of Zoom calls with our teams. And so one quick practical way you can, if you feel uncomfortable looking at a camera, order a tripod for your phone, set it on your desk, click record, and then forget about it. And when you lead your team and you're coaching your team, you will capture that organic, raw content. Find an editor, call Dash if you need it, but find an editor and send that footage, 30-minute footage, to your editor, and you'll get 3, 4, 5 social media posts out of that. And it's you in your element, it's you doing what you do best. And so I think finding what you do best and finding a plan of how you can capture that and sending that footage off is a great way to start.
Thanks, Nathan. James, any other thoughts?
Video, because the question is specifically about video, right?
No, I think it's just about helping people get comfortable with being interviewed, whether it's on video or anywhere.
Gotcha. I think that being interviewed, a good kind of tip I give it internally to my own team as well is when you know the story you want to tell. I know I'm just repeating myself, but when you know the story you want to tell, every interview question can come back to that anchor. So you don't have to think about, I need to answer 1 million questions with 1 million answers. You want to be able to answer 1 million questions with 3 answers, 2 answers, and they all tie back to that central story that you're trying to tell. So I think when you do the homework of understanding the story you want to tell, you'll be less nervous because it's just going to come from your heart, because that's the origin of your own story and your company's story. So everything else, whether you're being interviewed on camera, etc., it's just the natural consequence of, do I feel prepared to tell my story?
And, to James' point of being interviewed real quick, if I can, is that we have agency also who interviews us. And so maybe in the beginning, choose interview people that make you feel comfortable and that create an environment where you feel really comfortable to share and pull out the best in you. And I think that's important too. It's like we can kind of get an understanding of people we interact with, that might be a really good spot, a place to do that. So be mindful of that as well.
Absolutely. We have 2 minutes left. One of the fears, as we were talking about fears that operators may have around ad hoc storytelling is it may not always have all of their branded elements. And, Nathan, you had mentioned authenticity over perfection. Sometimes, we might not get when we do an ad hoc video or a story, we might not have the brand prominently viewed as we would like. James, how do you, as an operator, think about brand structure and modern storytelling, and how do you make them coexist?
2 quick things. One, write down your content strategy. You can't advance what you can't articulate. Going back to that earlier story about polling your own group about what story you want to tell, that'll let you know if you're on the right track. But 2, if you think about storytelling as advancing culture, culture is our values. So all of our companies take time to build our core values. We have 4 at Bella Groves. We talk about our values over and over and over and over again. So we are teaching them how to tell stories and identify the right stories. So I think you can do ad hoc storytelling if you think about storytelling as advancing your culture, and the components of that culture are going to be your core values. So talk about your core values and write down your content strategy.
Thank you. One last thought, and I'll shoot it over to Nathan to answer. 3 steps that operators can take now to share their stories faster and more transparently. 30 seconds.
I would say capture your content, talk to your residents with a camera off to the side, and talk to your staff with your residents off to the side, and then find an editor to make the magic happen and put that content together.
Yeah, and that editor can be video, it can be podcast, it can be written. There are lots of different ways to do that. Great. Well, I want to thank each of you for joining our panel today. I know we're out of time, and this has been hopefully a fantastic overview of storytelling for our audience, and look forward to hearing more from everyone about how they're telling their stories.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.